Evening over here. Um, Wait, I see that I have to. Okay, wait a second. Okay, now we're on. Um, I'm delighted. I'm delighted to be meeting with you today, even though it's a tiny, tiny amount of time for speaking about such a big and serious subject. But just lovely conversation. Let's try and talk about things having to do with memory and I'll also say, just because some of my dear friends are here, that I'm also part of the Bavli Yerushalmi community, which brings together New York, American Jews and Yerushalayim um, um, people. And we've been studying together for the past 24 years. And many of us are part of BJ. And and I've loved coming to your congregation and hope to be there again when we can. So I'll tell you what I chose to speak about. Um, I called this talk "May Their Soul Be Tied Up in the Bundle of Life," and I want to say something about it in memory. You know that on Jewish tombstones, right, for generations and generations, that's what we see on the tombstone. Is after the description of the deceased, we have the acronym, right? Taf Nun Tzadik Bet He, which means Tehe Nishmato or Nishmata, may their soul, Tzrua, bundled or tied up, Bitzrol, in the bundle of life. Um, And I wanted to think just for a minute, just for our opening kind of where we are thinking of memory. What is this bundle of life? What is the bundle of life? Where is it? And what happens when we're part of it? And what happens if chas v'shalom we're not? So so it's very interesting that the words come from the Tanakh. Yeah, they come from the Bible, from the story of David when Abigail, when he's running away from Saul, he comes and he's with Abigail and he has this amazing conversation with her, right? They're later going to be together. But she says to him, may the soul of my master, of my Lord, be bound up in the bundle of life, right? Tehe nefesh Adoni tzrura betzror hachaim. And then she says, "V'nefesh oivecha yiklena bekaf hakela," and the soul of your enemy may it be find itself in the fling, right, in the hollow of a sling, and nobody really knows what that is, but I'm sure it's bad. Okay, so we know from that verse that there's something amazing called the bundle of life, and later on in rabbinic literature, we find the idea that the souls of the righteous are are together in a bundle or in a treasure, otsar or tzror, as it says, tehen nishmatam tzrura b'tzror chaim. Um, and in the Zohar, in the book of the Zohar, which is my main, the place where I hang out most of my time, which is the main book of Jewish mystical literature, we have this amazing idea that the tzror chaim, right, the bundle of life, is this place, pulsating, living place that is filled with life. And some of it is understood as it's filled with actually individuated souls, like different souls. Like I'm there, you know, my mother's there, the people that I love that are deceased are there, people, souls that have not come down to the world are there. They all are part. It's like a pure bundle of life, okay? And it pulsates, it receives new souls all the time, and it also sends the souls down into the world. Okay, so it's like a heart, or like a, so and very, very fascinating image, right? And when we write on the tombstones of our beloved, um, may they be, may they find themselves in that bundle, right? I'm thinking of the Walt Disney Pixar film Soul that I just saw a few days ago, right? There's that place, right? There's souls don't cease existing. They live in some kind of place. Um, and I'm thinking of people that we remember in the day that commemorates the Holocaust, right? Yom HaShoah, and people that we think about and remember in different ways on Yom HaZikaron. Um, and and maybe tzrochai, maybe the bundle of life, is like a very beautiful, imagined image of collective memory, right? Collective, also collective memory that's very alive, that's made up of many personal memories. Um, and maybe it's just here, right beside us, in us, out of us, but it's described as a dimension called the bundle of life that we've been part of, that we will be part of, that is part of us. So I wanted I wanted to bring that first, just this image, and kind of relate to it as we're going along. And and I want to say something about what I thought of bringing because it's Torah from Israel. I wanted to bring 3 or 4 projects, very, very innovative projects having to do with Yom HaShoah and with Yom HaZikaron, and share them with you because actually in many situations I don't have where to share them, and I'm very connected to all of them and I love them, and I think they're part of Israeli cultural creativity. So I'm just delighted to bring them here. I also want to say that I was born and grew up in Israel, and I live in Israel. My children live in Israel. My 2 grandchildren live in Israel, and my parents came from the United States in the 40s. Okay, they came from America in the 40s to partake in this big, Zionist experiment and adventure for them as young Americans. Socialist. My mother was socialist. My father came from a more conservative kind of background, and they made their home here. And I want to say that as a person growing up here in Jerusalem and in Israel, um, the week or the 2 days of commemoration and memory and memorial that always fall right after Pesach, right? Um, and they're 1 week apart, and they all fall in Sfirat HaOmer, in the counting of the Omer, which is a time of mourning also, by the way, the first part of the counting of the Omer. And it is no wonder that for Israelis, they're really seen as the second kind of chunk of days of awe, that complement the religious days of awe in the month of Tishrei, right, that are biblical and rabbinic in many ways. The days that have been decided and made into law by the state of Israel are very, very awesome days. Yeah, for me, they've been very, very important days in my annual calendar. And and I want to start with the Memorial Day for Yom HaShoah. And I'm also saying this knowing that, my all my American friends and my New York friends, I know that you're just living in a very different reality. So I just want to kind of give you a taste of it. Okay, I'm into that at the moment. Um, I want to say that from the time I was in 5th grade, Yom HaShoah has been exceptionally important day for me personally. Um, and my parents would always allow me not to go to school on Yom HaShoah because it was very difficult for me to just be with the kids in my class, standing, being all embarrassed about the siren, trying not to laugh. What are they going to do? How are they going to keep silent for 2 minutes? And I would be totally connected to the radio. That was radio days. And just listen from the eve of Yom HaZikaron to the end of Yom HaZikaron LaShoah, to programs and music and interviews. That's the way the radio kind of operated in those days. There was no television yet, but it was like it was programs that were more like what we have today as podcasts, where we would have that type of programs throughout the day. And I always knew somewhere in my, in the soul of my souls, that I'm totally connected to all those souls that suffered, to those people that died, that I died a million times there. It was that kind of affinity for me in a very, very, very deeply personal way. Um, and it has been like so much of technology has changed. Like, what do people do? How do they do it? And I want to bring to our attention a wonderful new innovative ritual and kind of project that actually was born in 2014 by Professor Michal Govrin, who's a very dear friend of mine. All people in this project are friends of mine. That's why I wanted to bring it. And it's called, the project of convening or assembling. It's the assembling kind of ceremony for Yom HaShoah. And I want to say quite a few things about it, and also share with you some things having to do with it. So I want to say something about where it came from. And Rega, I'm going to share it here. Let me just see. Blah, 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 blah. Here it is. Okay. And Rega. Okay, so I want to here's something I want to bring from that. Okay, so I want to say something about this choice. We have in Israel these very, very kind of formal rituals having to do with Yom HaShoah. And Michal Govrin, whose mother is also a survivor of Plaszow and Auschwitz, and has an incredible story that was all in the Haaretz newspapers and this Friday. I'm sure it's translated into English as well. I think she had an acute sense of urgency around the understanding that most survivors are slowly dying, and we do not have the firsthand memory that is carried as testimony by people that took part in that horrific chapter in human history. So she came up with an idea that we have to create a new ritual, okay? And I want to bring some things that have to do with ritual. And I first want to say something about just the structure of it, okay? The structure of it is of a Haggadah. Here I can also, this is the structure. It's a beautiful Haggadah. I think now it's been almost all translated into English. I think it was practiced on Yom HaShoah in the States this year. And the idea is of communities, families getting together around this Haggadah, okay? And the Haggadah has a formal structure, and the structure is an invitation, right? There's like a zimun, there's an invitation, and I want to read the invitation. And the second part is the kina, is the lamentation or the elegy, the lamentation, stories, pictures, thoughts. People can share it around the table or in the community. Then there is the third part is kind of staring evil in the eye, like making place for the existence of evil in the world, in human behavior. And it's a very powerful part of this Haggadah. The fourth part is called standing in opposition, right? Mi ha'ish chafetz chaim. Who are the people? Who are the people like Primo? Who are the people that could do things, that could care, that could save, that could do, that could choose life? And that's the fourth part. And then the second part of the whole Hitkonsut ceremony, the whole convening ceremony, is called remembering responsibly. So if the first part of this whole ritual, of this whole magid, is the responsibility to remember, the second part is about how shall we remember in a responsible way. Okay, and the second part has two beautiful parts. One is connecting it to the Jewish connection of suffering turning into a mitzvah or a commandment of how to act in the world. So it's remembering that we were slaves, right, on all these different historical levels. And the last beautiful part of the ceremony is called a rising. It's like at the end of the Shiva, you help a person up. Okay, we rise up at the end of the ceremony. Okay, so that's first of all the structure of the ceremony, and it is very, very special. It's very and I want to read to you the invitation. Okay, the invitation is the opening. Sorry, something's wrong with my mouse here, but we're gonna get there. Okay, so you see it's structured like in a Haggadah, and it says invitation to be recited together, each person to themselves around the table. And I want to read this. Most of the pieces in the Haggadah were written by Michal Govrin and by Rani Yeager, who started Beit Tfilah Israeli, the Israeli Beit Tfilah, and Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum, and quite a larger crew of people that helped in assembling ideas and thoughts and documentation. So I just want you to kind of experience this calling that opens this Haggadah, if you could say, of Yom HaShoah. So I'll read it aloud. And think of it where everybody's reading it. You can read it to yourselves, of course. We were not there to experience it, to suffer it, and yet we willingly take upon ourselves the responsibility to remember, and to remember responsibly. And even if I have no words, and you have few, and whether I am distant or I am near, and whether we feel connected or feel no connection, we will assemble within ourselves, among ourselves, try to enter together. We are here today. And that's an invocation. I'll open it up for a minute because, I don't really lecture. I like listening to people. So we're going to hear what people have to say about this. And then from facing evil, we have this beautiful piece written by Michal that says, in the face of evil, cruelty, murder, destruction, and human erasure, and filled with a sense of absolute powerlessness, something incredible happened. Men, women, and children, both Jews and righteous Gentiles, discovered ways to stand up, to rise up and protect human dignity. רגע. And in that beautiful chapter of like Mi Haish, who are the people that could stand up, either in a spiritual way, in a political way, in an active way, in a sharing way. She writes, who are the women and men, who are the women and men who took up arms and inscribed the lines of freedom in Chronicles? A man who kept his commandments bound in tefillin, a woman who provided forged papers and who smuggled across borders. Who are the children who played and dreamt and wrote poems, and those who never left hold of their little hands, even as they walked to their death? Who are the man, the woman, the child, and the old woman who sanctified the face of mankind? Now, I'm sure that America, an American Jewry that is actually incredibly wonderful and innovative rituals, I'm sure there's a variety of American rituals having to do with Yom HaShoah, or at least I hope there are. But I want to say that for Israel, there was something so powerful about the strength of the kind of monumental formality that many of the rituals took upon themselves. That there's something so refreshing about what came about when Michal and Rani brought about this project. By the way, I think you can find a lot of the project and in English all online in the Hartman site. I'm not sure I should continue reading because there's so many things that I want to read. Do you want me to read this Yizkor? Do you have a Yizkor? Anybody wants to ask something?
Yeah, Melila, there is a question about the Haggadah and to what extent it invokes God. I see that a little bit right here in the Yizkor, but it also seems like there's not a lot of God language from the pieces that you're showing us. So to what extent?
There's also God language. There's a lot of it. There's a lot about the experience of faith in the Shoah, after the Shoah, in the experience of people. But actually, the whole idea is that it's like a Haggadah of Pesach, which means this is just a proposal and an invitation. And the idea, of course, is that every family, every congregation has its own people, has its own stories. So it's actually just giving the framework for the idea of convening together around a table or around a room and allowing different people to take different parts of this. I do feel I want to very much share my dear friend Ronnie Yeager, whose family is Bulgarian, and were saved totally. His mother and all her congregation was saved, and he felt that there was something very troublesome that there was not a special Yizkor for the righteous Gentiles. So here we have this very very special invitation of memory, okay? And it says the following. Remember, people of Israel, the righteous Gentiles who placed their own lives in danger for the sake of our persecuted and tortured brothers and sisters during the Shoah in the years 1939, 1945, and who are as shining stars in the overwhelming darkness of evil. Those who spoke out at a time of silence, those who offered sanctuary and a lease on life in the eye of the murderous storm, those who upheld those who were falling and extended a helping hand, food and clothing, who answered the cries of men, women, and children, men and women, workers of the land and city dwellers, of humble standing and high rank, people of faith and consciousness. My God. In the very valley of the shadow of death, these men and women stood by our people, and from the fiery inferno, they saved the few and the many. They kept the beacon of humanity alight when all around humanity dimmed, or the light of humanity dimmed. Remember, people of Israel, their grandness of spirit, their heroism, and their pure hearts. May God bind their souls in the bundle of life, and may it come to pass as it was written, as the whirlwind passes, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation. I think I'll stop sharing here for a moment, and um, and that's just a snippet, okay, of that project. And I just want to first of all offer it and say that it's also there in your world online and in all kinds of ways. I know that different congregations have developed traditions of how they do their Yom HaShoah. But I think the part that I wanted to bring about memory really has to do with, I think, the deep understanding that memory is not history and history is not memory. And that memory is really something that is a cultural construct, right? Um, I did not leave Egypt, but every Pesach I say, I left Egypt, right? We all left Egypt, which means that in kind of structuring memory as a living kind of a modality, and understanding that memory changes all the time, be it in our personal memories or in our cultural memories. I just want to say that the concept of being responsible to remember on the one hand, and then understanding that once you do not have um, the living people that went through the Shoah, that there's also a question of what does it mean to remember in a responsible way? Which parts do I want to remember? Which parts do we feel culturally that we must highlight? Which parts do we want to inherit? How do we want to do it? And how do we construct it for the younger people and for the older ones? I think that idea of responsibility, of remembering responsibly, is a new idea kind of in this whole question of Yom HaShoah. And also I want to say something about memory here, and then I'll end, the part having to do with Yom HaShoah, and maybe allow people to ask questions. But um, the UN decided also on an international day of commemorating the Shoah, right? Commemorating the Holocaust. And it's important for me to say that there's a huge tension. I have a student who's writing her doctoral dissertation on memory of the Shoah in Israel in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. But there's a huge tension between turning the story of the Shoah into being a universal story, or a story that belongs to different peoples of different ethnic backgrounds and different stories, different histories, because it turns into a story about what can humanity do, and in what way does this call upon us to take responsibility for human rights, etc., like in a very broad kind of universal way. That there's a tension between that and the story of the Shoah as a more particular and collective memory, in the memory of the Jewish people. They both pull in very different directions. Sometimes they complement, okay, these ideas of the way we remember and the way we transmit and how do we talk about it, that there's a tension between those two. And I think it has to be put on the table. It's truthful, right? It's truthful. Like, we have the way the story of redemption from Egypt is remembered by the Rastafaris, by Afro-American people, by Jews in different communities, right? You have how is it taken into as a political kind of manifesto? It's in all kinds of places. That's the kind of the total opening of the story. So I'm saying that when it comes to the decision that it's interesting that we have memory in this kind of universal Holocaust Memorial Day, and that we have a different date, which is the date in which we remember it in Israel, which always falls this week after Yom HaShoah. I'll also say, just as a piece of interesting history, that in deciding that the commemoration rituals were started already in the deportation camps, right? And right after the war, the year after the war, there were already a Zikaron, there were already Memorial Days. And it's very interesting that that in this, the deciding, maybe that's the interesting of being part of Israel, is that deciding about a day that's going to be for all, that's going to be the Yom HaShoah. The idea was to do it on the day of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was supposed to be in that day, but that's in Pesach, right? That happened on Pesach. And there was a feeling that it was just too intense to hold, the joy of coming out from free. It was just too much. So it was postponed for the week that falls right after that, in the week of Din, in the counting of the Omer, the week of judgment, or the week of Din, and that's when it is celebrated. So I just want to ask if anybody wants to ask something. This is the moment.
Melila, we did have a request, if I'm trying to find it online, a link to the English version of the Haggadah, but if that's something that you could.
I can't find it like that, so
No,
we have to.
not right now, but maybe after the fact, if you can send
Okay.
it to me, and I'll be able to send it out to
Okay.
everybody. Keep it
Okay.
fast.
Okay. I mean, maybe the English part is not open for all. The Hebrew for sure is. So I'll check that. So if the ideas of memory having to do with Yom HaShoah really kind of fall into the beautiful poem of Zelda, Lechol Ish Yeshem. Every person has a name, and it's about giving a name, right? Um, giving a name to those who were murdered, died. Um, how do we do that? How does this project give them a name and a face? I want to move now to Yom HaZikaron, to the fallen soldiers and those victims of actions of terrorism, right? That's really the name of Yom HaZikaron, right? It's the Israeli Memorial Day for Israel's fallen soldiers and the victims of actions of terrorism, which came in 1963. And I want to say again, as an experience, that the power of Yom HaZikaron is very, very intense. And I think for me, maybe because I'm a musical person, it has to do with the fact that it's Sunday night now, but by tomorrow, all of the radio goes into minor kind of chords, which means the place that it's sensed before everything is a type of music, right? A type of music and songs that are on the radio. I don't have a television, so I don't know about television, so I'm not going to talk about it. But the fact that as an evolving day of commemoration, because maybe the Shoah is happened, but remembering the people that died in the bloody Israeli Palestinian conflict is not over at all. It's not over at all. So so it's, first of all, a very vivid experience. It's a very vivid experience of giving a face, finding a way to be with memory. And I want to say there have been many innovative things, right? There's the regular big kind of mamlachti, kind of national events and ceremonies. There's the school events that are sometimes incredibly, incredibly creative. I go every year at 11 o'clock in the morning to the school where my children graduated, that every year gives the children of the highest of the 12th grade, they create the whole thing. They create the whole ritual. They invent it anew. They have guidelines, but they put their own dreams, hopes, and fears into it. They're the ones that are going to go into the army in the next year, so it's quite an amazing kind of thing. There's also been new kind of creativity around alternative memorial days, and the alternative memorial days are the ones started by the Israeli-Palestinian Family Forum, which is quite an incredible commemoration. It happens on Yom HaZikaron. And there's also the HaAzmaut project, which brings together Israelis and Palestinians on Yom HaZikaron, with the idea, and this idea might be strange to some of you and might be clear to some of you, that on days of deep, deep sorrow and grief, many of us have the will to just be with our people, our family, our people, the people that share our worldviews, and that grief really separates people. And I think the idea of these two very kind of left-leaning, powerful rituals and kind of events of the Israeli-Palestinian Family Forum and HaAzmaut, which is by a group called Yachad, it is very powerful with the idea that no, actually, terrible grief can bring us together, and the fact that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has caused so much bloodshed on both parts, right? Of innocent people, of soldiers, of young people, of life lost, that there's a place to come and kind of weep about it together, like be in that and kind of take responsibility for the ability to be with that together. Somebody wanted to ask something?
Yeah, we have one question in the chat. I think this is reflecting back on the Yom HaShoah, the Hitkantut ceremony from Hartman, the Seder, how younger people, the younger generations are responding to it. So I don't know if you want to answer that now, and then we've got two people who are raising their hands, so we can.
So let Susan speak. Susan, sweetie.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So
Hi, Susan.
I'm Melila.
Hi.
Okay. It seems to me that the way it's framed and the way memory is framed, the way that you spoke about, is so powerful. And at our Seder this year, Zohar said, boy, this is such a vengeful, like this, we have this idea of such a vengeful God, and we say Shvo Chamatcha, and we have all of these ways, but we still take out the drops because we know there was suffering, but it's so particularistic. So the way that that balance is, and the way that the Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron are so entwined, could be so much continuing that very particularistic story that only focuses on suffering, our suffering. But the way that the Haggadah that you have for that, from Yom HaShoah has the righteous Gentiles, already sets us up, sets our up for our minds to turn in somewhat of a different way, to not only continue that narrative around ourselves individually.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I can say that I've been in 5 of those ceremonies. Some have been incredibly powerful. They cause great dissent in Israeli kind of, media. But I find that for me, once, once you break the barrier of thinking that you can't do it and you can do it, it's very difficult not to do it, because I can say that for me personally. But I'm not going to take another hand now just for, oh, wait, Gail, did you want to ask something? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, hi. This. Thank you for what you're bringing. And my mom just went to lie down, but she's a survivor, and we're during the shloshim, or the loss of my dad, and very much a similar background to what you described. But what I wanted to ask about the Seder format was whether you envisioned the memorial being done in the family setting or in the larger setting, because I think our American observance of Yom HaShoah is, often in a more communal setting, and the Seder is in the family setting. And certainly for those of us who hold the story, those are two very different things.
Right. But I just want to say that in the way they put it together that you can use it in different modalities. You can use it in different ways, having to do with, is it the large family? Is it the tribe? Is it your congregation? I mean, there's always going to be people that can bring treasures to such a big round table. Yeah, many places that I've been in this, in the Hitkansut of Yom HaShoah, it starts in big circles and then it's smaller, like round tables, where people tell their story. It's like, it's all mixed in with humor and songs and weeping. I think it's a very powerful ritual in progress, okay? And that's why I wanted to bring it. And Rega Chevre, I want to move now into something else, because if not, I will not feel that I did my job, which is that I want to bring to you my most beloved new project having to do with Yom HaZikaron. That is really just the sorrow of the loss of life. And when it has to do with soldiers, it's a very young life. I want to bring to your attention an incredible project started by Beit Avichai in Israel. And the project is called A Face. I'm going to already write and share it with you right now. And you see, this is the project. And the project is very innovative because it took tens of Israeli wonderful animation artists. Okay, it took artists, and it gave each artist a family or a person, a bereaved brother or sister or parent or wife, and they learned their story, and each one was given the task of doing like a 4-minute artistic take on it. Okay, now the choice to do it in animation is fascinating, and it's very interesting for me to think, what do you feel about what does it do? Some of them are translated into English, some of them are not. I want to start with one which kind of connects Yom HaShoah to Yom HaZikaron, and it's remainder, right? You can see it here. It says, the clip tells the moving story of Amnon Netzer Aharon, a Holocaust survivor, okay, and who was killed in 1948. I don't think I have to say anything more because you don't need words to see this, but we're now looking at what happens when artists mold memory, right? Let's first. Oy, what happened? רגע. Sorry. Just for a moment, I'm stopping the share. I wanted to bring that as a memory, right, of someone I didn't know and I didn't know about. And this question of there are so many ways of grieving, and there's so many ways of loss, and there's so many places of, the wells of those tears. And the question is, how can young artists and the story come together in a way that turns it into something that is so alive? And I wanna see if I can, let me just see if I can do it. But I wanna bring, if we have time, I think we have time for one more. I just wanna bring a very different, they're very heartbreaking, and I just watch them and weep. But I think that's also part of what being able to kind of break your heart and open up those. So all these that I'm kind of going through are all different ones. And I wanted to show you this one, which I think is one of my favorites. I just want to make sure that I have the captions in English.
בכל קיץ היינו הולכים לחוף, אני ואבא שלי, לראות את צבות הים הגדולות, שעולות להטיל את הביצים שלהן בחול. היינו מבלים לילות בחוף הים, כשאנחנו שרועים על אחת הגבעות הזהובות, שטופים באור ירח. מרגישים את מגעו של החול הקריר, ואת ריחו המיוחד והמלוח של הים. לילה אחד, הן הגיחו פתאום מן הים. כגושים אפלים עלו הצבות מן המים, והתקרבו אל החוף. הן הטילו את ביציהן וגררו את עצמן בכבדות על שברי הצדפים בחזרה אל הים. מדי לילה היינו חוזרים לים, לראות אם הצבים כבר בקעו. וכעבור זמן מה, צבים קטנים ברוחב כף ידי כבר החלו לפנות אל המים. הייתה צבה אחת קטנה עם כתם של עלה על הגב, שאהבתי במיוחד. אבא אמר לי שאפשר לגעת לה בשריון. אבא נפל במלחמת יום הכיפורים. במשך 6 שנים ערבתי לצבות הים כפי שהייתי עושה איתו. חיכיתי בסבלנות לראות את הכתמים הכהים שבים ועולים מן המים. ולילה אחד, כשכבר כמעט נואשתי ונרדמתי, צבת ים גדולה עלתה אל החוף, ועלה קה על גבה.
I actually wanted us to see 4, which means that I don't know how to take time seriously. But I really want to invite you and think also of people that you know, of teenagers, of older people, of people that find that they're disconnected, because there's something very, very powerful in the choice of these short videos to be, they're not about ideology, they're about people. They're about the life of those people. It's about the life of the ones that stay when it's severed, you know, when that life is taken away. And I think the fact that each artist chose to convey it in their own artistic way, and that their choices were, what is the experience of a brother losing her, of a brother losing his sister, or a sister losing her brother, or of a father losing his son, of what is the experience of bereavement of a mother, is, I think that's, or of a child, like in the one we just saw, right? The one, you just lost your father, you're just a little kid, like to put it into that world of animation and take it out of the footage world, because we have so many programs that are really about the life of these people. We have programs that are about the music people wrote before they were killed. We have a lot of projects, but I think the Beit Avichai project is a wonderful communal also experience of intergenerational ability to bring stories into something that's very speaks to all people in different ways. Sometimes stories that maybe would be unbearable without the without the artistic mode allowing us to partake in it, okay? Because it's so tearful, and it's so difficult. So I'm inviting all of you to mamash take time to look at the Beit Avichai Memorial Day project. And I want to end with, I can't believe it that it's already, oh my God. Okay, but I have 3 minutes. Do I have 3 minutes? Surely 3 minutes. Okay. I want to end by just 2 more comments. One is another project, which is a wonderful project of the Havdalah. Okay, it's a Havdalah ceremony. It's very innovative. It must be like 8 years old, maybe not more. It was started by Ronnie Yeager in Beit Tfilah Israeli, and it came from the deep feeling that it is so shocking to move in Israel from the day of commemorating the dead right into the festivities of Yom HaAzmaut, of Independence Day, that it was just, you know, it was crazy. People couldn't do it. It was brutal. There was something brutal about it. And Rani Yeager also in other communities have created beautiful, beautiful kind of rituals where people convene in order to create the Havdalah, right? The Havdalah, like we do between Shabbat and Chol, right? After Shabbat. It's taking time to move in a more integrative way from the sorrow. So it starts in the depths of sorrow. It starts with songs and stories and piyutim that are of Yom HaZikaron, and it slowly moves. It like moves the kind of the affect, the emotion slowly moves into a place where there's closure of that part and the opening of Yom HaAzmaut, which again is the next part of the ritual. So because Yom HaAzmaut is so poor and impoverished in meaningful rituals, except for, eating meat. And it's a very important day for us. It's very important, but it doesn't have any structures that are meaningful. I think that the choice to create a Havdalah in order to transition in a more wholesome way has been wonderful. And I just want to end by reading a beautiful poem of Zelda. Some of you that were with me in the IJS retreat know it. Rega, let me see if I can bring it. Rega, here it is. I just want to end by, Rega, let me see. By the way, no, I can't do it. Something is not moving here. Tov, אני לא יודעת, I'm not going to do it because I can't, but I'll read it to you. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop the share, and it's not this one, and I'm going to read to you a very, very, very amazing and beloved poem written by Zelda. And I think for me, maybe it's what I really want to lay here on the table as far as the question of remembering, telling stories of, understanding our responsibility towards memory. So I'm going to read it. It's called Kol Halayla Bachiti, right? It's a poem written by Zelda, who lived in Mea Shearim, comes from a very famous Chabad family. She was the cousin of the late Chabad Admor, right? And Steve Sager, my dear friend, Rabbi Steve Sager, translated it. And I want to read it. I'll first read the first lines in Hebrew and then I'll transition. Kol halayla bachiti, ריבונו של עולם, אולי יש מוות שאין בו אלימות, מוות שדומה לפרח? All night I cried, Master of the world, perhaps there is a death that holds no terror, a death that is like a flower. All night I spilled my pleas, although I am dust, let there be within me tranquility to gaze at the heights of heaven more and more and more, to take leave of their beauty. All night I thought, many creatures dwell in my pained breast with various stories. I must light a candle and gaze at them before I sleep in death. So I wanted to end with my beloved poet, with Zelda, with this painful acknowledging that there's so many that we have to light a candle for and tell their story, right? We have to look at them and tell their story and find a way to understand that memory, I think as many wise people have understood, is not about capturing the past only. It's really about thinking about how to understand the present and how to make new paths into the future. Okay, that's what memory is about, right? Memory is not history. It's that thing in the past. It's that lighting and remembering in the present. And it's about the responsibility for remembering so that we can make sure that certain things don't happen, that we agree upon things. So I wanted to bring her very poetic sense of it, of we must light a candle and gaze at them. And thank you for listening to all this. I hope it was interesting for you. It was interesting for me to think which projects of the so many projects do I kind of want to share with you. Thank you very much. And I hope you have good Chagim ahead of you and another Memorial Day and Yom HaAzmaut. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Melila. I think you can see from the comments in the chat that it was very meaningful to us. And just so grateful for your bringing both your own Torah and also Torah from Israel, from all these different aspects of Israeli society and cultural creativity, as you said. This is really Torah in such a beautiful and expansive and important way of thinking of it. So thank you for that and for adding to our own meaning of this time period and of the days that we'll be marking ahead. And we will try to collate all of the materials and projects and resources that you mentioned in this presentation and send them out to everyone. So we'll try to do that this week in advance of Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAzmaut. So thank you, everybody. Shavua Tov and Chodesh Tov.
Thank you. Shavua Tov.
And I want to thank the
Chodesh
PCA
Tov.
Foundation, you know, for having all these wonderful programs and wonderful people. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Shalom.
Bye.
Toda
Thank you.
rabba.
Good job, Melila.
Bye.